I'm super excited about the topic today, and there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to try to go through kind of my notes first, probably be 25 minutes or so to see if I can get through it in that amount of time, and then we'll do Q&A. So if you have questions during when I'm talking, put them in the chat or write them down so that we save them towards the end. Um, but definitely a great topic. I'm glad so many people. We had an awesome turnout. I just kind of announced this a couple days ago, and we had 30 or so people register. So that's a pretty good turnout with short notice. So what's interesting about this topic? So this topic is different intensities of exercise, light, moderate, and vigorous, and how that relates to long-term health. And what's interesting about this study, there's a couple things that make this study unique. One, there was 73,000 people in this study, so it was a very big study, which is hard to do in fitness often. Also, they followed people for 8 years, so it was a pretty long-term, robust study for health outcomes. So hard to get that kind of data. The other thing that made this study really unique is they were looking at actual health outcomes and mortality, not calories burned. So most previous studies that look at the difference between high intensity training and moderate training or light training was looking at energy output, or METs as they're often sometimes called, metabolic energy. Or another way to look at it is calories burned. And in those studies, it would show vigorous exercise always wins because it's hard. If you've ever done vigorous exercise, you know it. You're putting out a lot of energy. You burn about twice as much energy doing vigorous as moderate. But this study was groundbreaking because it's the first time they were able to really look at long-term health outcomes in the different intensities. And the result actually blew people away because it was so much greater benefits with vigorous exercise than anyone ever thought looking at from an energy standpoint. So I'm going to go through kind of why that is. That's going to be the big bulk of the talk today, but I want to give you a little more background on the study itself. So they looked at each person, they wore an accelerometer. So that's another interesting thing. The way they studied intensity was with an accelerometer, which basically means how fast you're moving. So they looked at intensity of movement speed and related that to intensity. That's a very actually good relationship, even though it's not taking into account, fitness level, age, gender, anything like that, but it's looking at just movement speed. They gave people a profile based on that. Were they light, moderate, or vigorous in the profile? And they followed those people for 8 years. They looked at all-cause mortality, which there's a good correlation to, but all-cause mortality, it can be things outside of fitness related things. So it's not as directly correlated as they looked at cardiovascular disease. That's really directly correlated. They looked at diabetes, type 2 diabetes. They looked at major cardiovascular events. So cardiovascular disease mortality they looked at, so people who died from heart disease, and then they looked at people who had major events, heart attack, stroke, but didn't necessarily die from that, but had a major event. And then they also looked at cancer incidences and cancer mortality within that. So five major groups of health outcomes. They were looking at the health equivalent ratio for 1 minute of vigorous. What was the health equivalent ratio of moderate? And for 1 minute vigorous, what was the health equation ratio for low intensity? So really different from what they were looking at before when previously every minute of vigorous activity was assumed to be 2 minutes of moderate activity. That's what I said, but that's because they were not looking at long-term disease outcomes, but it came from energy expenditure data. This is a quote from Rhonda Patrick, who I love, by the way. If you want to follow someone, Rhonda Patrick is awesome in the kind of physiology, exercise physiology space. So then how did they, so the findings, when they looked at vigorous to moderate, in all-cause mortality, instead of being 1 minute to 2 minutes, which is what people have been assuming up till now, it was 1 minute to 4 minutes of moderate. So for every minute of intensity, 4 minutes of moderate. But what's even more kind of mind-blowing than that is for the cardiovascular mortality in events, it was 1 minute to 8 minutes of moderate. So you'd have to do 8 times the amount of exercise at a moderate level that you'd have to do at a high intensity level to get the same benefit in cardiovascular health and preventing cardiovascular disease or events in your life. Type 2 diabetes was even more. It was 1 minute to 9 minutes, so 9 times. And we'll talk about why that is, but that's huge. So, vigorous exercise is just exponentially better for long term health outcomes than moderate. Now, when we look at light, I mean, some of this is common sense in a way. Like, if you've done different types of exercise, you can tell what's happening in your body to a degree. But there's a lot of talk out there about the benefit of light exercise. And if any of you have heard me talk before, I've said this before and it's not always popular, but walking is not exercise. Walking is movement and activity, and it is so important to who we are as humans, but it is not the same thing as exercise. Exercise needs to stimulate or challenge your vascular system or challenge your muscular system, and walking does neither unless you're super deconditioned. If you're super deconditioned, walking's a great place to start. But walking is not going to help these long-term health outcomes. When they looked at light exercise, 1 minute of intensity was 53 minutes of low intensity for all cause mortality. But more importantly, it was 79 minutes and 94 minutes for cardiovascular. Cardiovascular was 79 minutes. So you have to do 79 times the amount of exercise or 94 times the amount of exercise for type 2 diabetes. So, I mean, it just doesn't even come close. The other super interesting thing for cancer, 1 minute of vigorous was worth 156 minutes of light intensity. It blows it out of the water. And really, there were several benefits that no matter how much low intensity you do, there's just no it's never going low intensity is never going to give you some of the benefits at high intensity. It just won't. And we'll talk about why that is. But I'm kind of passionate about this confusion out there about this low intensity kind of craze of like walk, 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 which get your steps. When steps came out on our Fitbits and on our trackers, somehow steps got misinterpreted to, oh, my steps are my exercise for the day. No, your steps keep you from sitting all day. Sitting is considered the new smoking because that's how bad sitting all day is for your health. Getting up and taking steps and moving and daily activity is essential to break up sitting, to help manage glucose control and just to get your blood flowing. But it is completely different category than exercise. So I think that's where some of the confusion came in when we started talking about steps. That became kind of the goal for the day of exercise. And let's be honest, up to about 100 years ago, walking and movement was essential to being human. But now, especially in the last 20 to 30 years, that's no longer true. We are so much more sedentary than our biology was made to be. And so we have to be intentional about getting up and moving and getting up and walking just for baseline human health. But today we're really talking about how we optimize for long-term disease prevention, and that's where the high intensity comes in. So let's talk about defining what each level represents. So in this study, they looked at 3 buckets: light, moderate, and vigorous. In reality, there's not 3 buckets, there's like a continuum, right? So I think there needs to be more clarity in future studies of what that really looks like, because it's a little bit vague. What is light? What is moderate? What is vigorous? But generally speaking, we can kind of make our own kind of intuition about what that looks like. Light activity, when they say light, they're even talking below zone 2. So it's not light as in zone 2 cardio. It's like intermittent movement. It's like very light walking, getting up, doing housework, maybe running errands, getting out of your car, standing, just movement, not necessarily what we think of sustained exercise. It's just daily movement. So that's what they looked at for light. Moderate is more like if you're used to cardio zones, like zone 2, zone 3, like you're still in your aerobic base, but you have an elevated heart rate. You're not reaching major fatigue. You can do it for a long time. This could be brisk walking, light jogging, kind of light to moderate cycling. They put in here gardening, which this is one of my pet peeves about. I've heard people talk about this study. gardening could mean a huge difference of things. It could be clipping petals, that doesn't take a lot of energy, or it could be lifting 50-pound bags of soil. So when you say gardening, what do you mean? And this is, I kind of tease this in my thing, but I've seen people post about this on Instagram, and they'll say, well, I'll get there to a second because let me finish defining this and then I'll tell you what people are saying that kind of bothers me because it's really misleading people. Um, they define vigorous activity as running, fast cycling, intense sports, sprinting or running upstairs, playing hard with your kids or your dogs. They looked at activities that people were doing that weren't necessarily in a workout, but just something they were doing in the day. And some people had more what they call VILPA, vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity. It just means throughout the day, they're moving more vigorously, just randomly. And these are things like running up a flight of stairs, power walking up a hill, carrying heavy groceries up multiple flights of stairs, or playing high energy games with your kids or pets. So, what did I see on Instagram? Oh, walking and carrying groceries and playing with your kids is vigorous activity. You left out the word power walking up a steep hill. You left out the word that you're carrying groceries up the stairs, and you left out that you're playing high energy games with your kids, which is totally different. So people take this information and water it down. What is important is not the activity you're doing. What is important is what's happening inside your body. And we all know, you guys, I'm probably preaching to the choir, you know when you've had a high intensity effort versus a low intensity effort, right? It's how hard are you breathing? How much is your blood pumping? How much burn are you getting in your body? Those are the signals we need to get in vigorous. So when I saw people posting about this, I was like, man, people are just really, really watering this down, trying to say that just walking and carrying your groceries are going to be equivalent to this vigorous exercise. Like that is not really true the way they're stating that. So, light activity, daily movement, not really heart rate, not really a lot of heart rate, just moving your body. Moderate, sustained heart rate, but it's something you can sustain for a long time, but it's getting your heart rate up and your blood flowing more quickly. And then vigorous, you can't sustain it for a long time. It's usually 1 or 2 minutes of hard bursts, and it's going to cause fatigue quickly. So, why is vigorous activity so much more beneficial for long-term health? 100 times, 150 times more benefit than light. Um, what was some of the peaks in vigorous? It was like 9 times more for diabetes, 8 times more for cardiovascular disease for even moderate exercise. And a lot of us, I would say most people tend to exercise in the moderate zone, right? It's like type 2 cardio or aerobic, going out for a jog or maybe doing some light weights. Um, but why is vigorous, just going that next level, so much better for our health? So let's break it down. There's 4 major categories of what happens in your body when you do vigorous activities that doesn't happen when you're doing moderate or light. Number one is a significant increase in your blood flow, in the speed of the blood traveling in your veins, and how hard your heart is having to pump to deliver that blood. This matters in a couple ways. Just purely the blood moving faster in your body creates more shear stress in the inside of your vein walls and your artery walls. And this is stimulating the internal surface of your blood vessels, which are called the endothelial lining. The endothelial lining is a living tissue. It's made of tiny little muscles. It keeps that healthier. It also resists plaque formation and also resists atherosclerosis, which means stiffening or hardening of your vascular walls. That's what leads to high blood pressure. Pretty much as we age, we gradually increase blood pressure unless you're doing activity that's maintaining the health of your vascular walls. So the higher intensity workouts are putting a shear stress on the inside of those walls from the movement of your blood. This is also producing nitric oxide, which is a gas, but it's a very healthy gas that causes flexibility of our vascular system. And it tells our vascular system to relax and widen and expand. And this creates that flexibility of our walls. It also allows us to deliver blood more quickly to the muscles. Why does that happen? Think about it. If you're working out really hard and your muscles need oxygen, your body wants to get the blood there faster. So it opens up the vascular system so it's easier for the blood to travel there. Isn't that amazing that our body can like do these things? But that process is what keeps our vascular system healthy. The other thing that says, if you remember when I said that cancer was the biggest delta between light exercise and vigorous was cancer. And the practicing theory of why this is because when you have tumors can shed circulating tumor cells into your bloodstream, and that's how cancer travels to other parts of your body and can metastasize. Vigorous exercise, when your blood is moving quickly, kills those cells because they cannot handle the stress of the blood flow. So that is why 1 minute of vigorous was worth like 156 minutes of light exercise, because it's actually preventing the cancer cells from moving through your body, because that shear stress triggers, it's called apoptosis. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's programmed cell death that is triggered from the shear stress from the blood. So that's pretty amazing. Okay, so that's your blood is moving faster. Then what happens in vigorous exercise? When you get to a certain point when you can't keep up with the oxygen demand, your body enters what's called hypoxia. This only happens when the demand for oxygen is greater than what your body can deliver. Okay, so you're doing some type of exercise that's more intense than what your body can keep up with oxygen. And this is hugely important for a cascade of things that happen in your body. First of all, just reaching hypoxia is a big driver of cardiac output because your body is trying to prevent you from reaching hypoxia. So it's going to work as hard as it can. So repetitive exercise reaching hypoxia is going to boost your cardiovascular output. That's basically like training your lactate threshold. If you guys have heard that term before, it's training at high intensity volumes to try to get your body better and more efficient at delivering oxygen. So that means your heart becomes stronger. That means because your stroke rate gets, you push more blood out per stroke. That means your vascular system's healthier. It means your mitochondria get healthier because they get more efficient at taking that oxygen from your bloodstream, turning it into ATP for fuel for your muscles. That only happens when you're working at an intensity high enough that your body has to try to adapt to that. Okay, so low level is not going to get that same adaptation. When you reach hypoxia, the other thing that happens, this is very important as we age. So we have two types of muscle fibers, type 1 and type 2, or slow twitch, fast twitch. Slow twitch is what it sounds like. Muscles that fire slowly, they work with oxygen, they do all of our daily activities. If you're an endurance athlete or if you're a marathoner, you're using slow twitch muscles. Think of a marathoner's body, a competitive marathoner, thin and sinewy muscles versus a sprinter's body, more rounded, developed, kind of bigger muscles. Sprinter has type 2, marathoner has type 1. When you reach hypoxia, because type 1 muscle fibers use oxygen as fuel, the oxygen is running out. They no longer can use that fuel. So who has to jump in? Your type 2 muscle fibers. Type 2 use glucose for energy. Okay, why is this important? This is important for several reasons. So first of all, fast twitch muscle fibers, or type 2, are the ones that are crucial for quick reactions, power. Think fall prevention, think injury protection. They're the muscles that respond quickly. They're fast twitch. As we age, type 2 muscle fibers are the ones we lose. Older adults have up to 30% less or smaller fiber types than younger adults. And this explains pretty much all age-related declines in muscle strength and power is this 30% decrease in type 2 fibers. So we care about type 2. We want to keep our type 2. The only way to reach our type 2 is to work hard enough that our type 1 drop out of the equation. The other thing about type 2 fibers, they use glucose. Why is that so important? Remember how diabetes was the highest difference between moderate and vigorous? That's because what is type 2 diabetes? That means you have too much glucose in your body. Your body's not using it. You have too much in your bloodstream that raises insulin resistance. So your body's not responding the way to. It's a metabolic dysfunction in your body. When you use type 2 muscle fibers, they burn that glucose that's floating around in your body and actually uses that glucose. It's like a depository for glucose. And now your body can burn the glucose that's floating in your body and it can use it and get rid of it so that we have room for more. And now that restores a healthy metabolic system. That's how we're both supposed to work. We're supposed to be able to use the glucose we have for energy and sometimes use fat we have for energy, but we often get stuck at only using glucose because it's just circulating in our body all the time and we're not putting it into our muscles for energy. So that is the reason why type vigorous is so much better for the type 2 diabetes and basically metabolic health. Type 2 diabetes is a breakdown of our metabolic health. So vigorous exercise is the best for metabolic health. The other thing, when the type 2 muscle fibers start getting involved, they uniquely generate lactate, lactic acid, blood lactate. Type 1 muscle fibers do not generate lactate as a byproduct. Only type 2 do. We think of lactic acid, we used to think of it as a waste product, but now we know better. It is a powerful signaling trigger for many things that happen in our body. So when type 2 muscle fibers get involved, they generate lactate. If you guys have worked out with BFR, you know this feeling well. It is a burn. If you're not working out with BFR, you still can get that burn. You just got to work a lot harder to get it. Type 2 muscle fibers, when type 2 muscle fibers generate lactate, here's three major things that happen. First of all, that sends a signal to your pituitary gland. The more lactate circulating in your blood, so when you get an increase in lactate that your body can't deal with because you're working too hard, sends a signal to your pituitary gland to release human growth hormone. That is the trigger for human growth hormone, which is the most important hormone for anti-aging, hands down, the most important. It's what controls us being able to build and maintain muscle mass. It's what controls our bone density, our energy, our body composition. So not gaining weight in our midsection. A lot of that is human growth hormone. Human growth hormone is good for our skin. It's really just the hormone that we want to hang on to the most as we age, and vigorous exercise and using type 2 muscle fibers that generate lactate is the way to get human growth hormone. The second big thing that lactate does when you have higher lactate is a key driver of mitochondrial biogenesis. So I've talked about this before, but mitochondria are our energy molecules within our cells. That's what creates our energy. As we age, like typically everything as we age, they break down. They're not as efficient. They're not as effective. Vigorous exercise encourages them to be more effective again. They get rid of dysfunctional mitochondria. They actually get rid of it, cell death. They increase efficiency and then they create more healthy mitochondria. Anyone who's worked out vigorously, or especially in BFR, you'll notice an increase in energy and endurance right away. That is largely because your mitochondria have become healthy because of this lactate signal that they're getting. Lastly, and this is a huge one, and the study didn't look at this, but there's other studies that have, is lactate equates to brain health. So lactate produces BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically fertilizer for your brain. It helps the neurons, it helps keep your tissue healthy, it helps you recover. Our brains shrink as we age, but by doing vigorous exercise, gray matter goes up by about 60%. And gray in adults 60 and older, greater gray volume was most evident with people with doing vigorous activity. So that lactate maintains the efficiency of our brain, but also the kind of bulk of our brain. Think of our brain, it's not exactly a muscle, but it's healthy tissue, right? So just like our muscles get smaller as we age, we don't want that. Same with our brain. We want to exercise our brain through that higher blood flow, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Lactate is fuel for the brain. Lactate's also fuel for our heart. People don't always know that. It is a fuel source. So those are all, and the last thing I'll say about that is there was another study in 2024 that of all modifiable risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, vigorous physical activity was the single best predictor of future risk. Second only to age, because that comes with age, but it was the single best predictor of future risk. So vigorous activity prevents neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's. So those are all the things that happen in our body with vigorous exercise that just will never happen with light exercise and moderate exercise. It can touch on some of those things, but it's never going to get into that as great. And that's why there's so much better long-term health outcomes with vigorous. All right, two sections left, and then I'll open up to questions. So what are the obstacles and problems with vigorous exercise? It sounds great on paper. Just go do vigorous exercise, but it's hard. And one is we can't do too much of it. There's a lot of old gym workout theory that makes people think they have to crush themselves. Think CrossFit. Think you got to just bury yourself to get benefits. And that is not true. We want precision, high intensity with recovery. Short, high intensity workouts are going to outperform long, moderate workouts. Long, moderate workouts is where we get more stress and cortisol because moderate still stresses the body. We do it for a long time, and that's where a lot of people live. I'm going to work out longer, longer, longer. Women live in that a lot. When they hit midlife, they start feeling weight gain. They think they got to work out more, when instead it's work out more vigorously for less time. Let your body adapt to that vigorous and then recover. We don't want to increase cortisol. We don't want to get chronic fatigue. And that can happen when you do too much high intensity. So precision is important. The other thing is a lot of people don't like high intensity exercise. It's hard. As we get older, there's injury risk. I don't care who you are and how lucky you've been in your life to not have an injury or how healthy you are. At some point in life, our body does not like heavy stress and load the way it did when we were younger. We have less cartilage. Our joints age over time. And so at some point, there's nobody that's 80 that could lift as much as they could when they were 20. It's just impossible. So it gets harder as we get older and the injury risk becomes higher. But we still know that vigorous is better. So what do we do? There's a couple things to do. First of all, in general, from a cardiovascular standpoint, vigorous exercise is safe as you get older. Now, obviously, you got to meet yourself where you are. If you've been super deconditioned or coming off a long-term injury or illness, you're not going to all of a sudden go out and try to get your PR, right? Like you want to be smart about this. But the point is challenge yourself outside your comfort zone. So if you're someone who's only been doing light activity, start by trying to add in some moderate, right? And build from there. But if you're someone that's healthy and been active, pushing your comfort zone in small chunks is going to be super beneficial. What's vigorous for one person is relative. So for someone, it might be running. For someone else, it could be a brisk walk if you're more deconditioned. Or for someone older, maybe it's just doing sit and stand from the chairs to stimulate some of that vigorous activity. But here's something that I feel like is true. So due to injury or age, truly vigorous activity becomes more difficult. And for some people, it becomes impossible. So as vigorous activity declines, so does our health. And we often blame this on age. Oh, we're getting older, so my fitness going down. I have less energy, I have less muscle. But really, the decline is largely because we are no longer getting these adaptations of our body that vigorous exercise triggers. So this is where, for the person who feels that way, like I'm declining because I just can't push. I was 43 when I felt that way. That's young, but I had a hip replacement that prevented me from pushing the way I used to push, and I felt my fitness and health decline. And it was depressing. And I felt like I had no good path forward because I already in my 40s was declining, despite wanting to work out hard. For me, it wasn't a motivation problem, it was a physical problem. This is where, and for a lot of you on the call who do BFR, you already know this, but this is where I think BFR is going to be a game-changing solution for how people age because it's the first time that vigorous exercise can be done by anyone, regardless of fitness level. Because instead of making ourselves work super hard to get those vigorous benefits, we're reducing the oxygen and causing hypoxia, which is the beginning of all the cascade of benefits by using the bands. And so a light to moderate level of activity is gonna, your body's gonna respond with all of those benefits of vigorous. It's gonna go through hypoxia, which means type 2 1 muscle fibers fail, and we get type 2 muscle fibers, which are huge. It means we get the blood flow shear force going through our body for endothelial health, for cancer prevention. It means that our type 2 muscle fibers are going to produce lactate, which encourages human growth hormone, brain health, and mitochondrial biogenesis. All of these things are going to help us age in a way that nobody has been able to see before, because up till now, you had to work out really hard, and at some point that becomes impossible. And so that's why, for those who know me, I'm so passionate about this BFR technique because I think it is going to make aging strong, independent, healthy, with energy possible for way, way, way more people. So to me, it's the ideal tool because it gets your body to respond to vigorous exercise with low mechanical stress on your body. It's easier to recover. You're not going to overtrain. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to be so intimidated that you don't do the work. So it makes vigorous exercise possible. And I really think it's the future of fitness, honestly, especially for people over 45. It is the future of fitness. The science is too good. The results are too good. People have been ignoring it. People have been kind of poo-pooing it or ridiculing it because people are hang on to their mindset of like, you got to work super hard to be fit. Let's make it more universal for people. Let's make it easier so more people can reap the benefits of that vigorous exercise. In my Celly Strength program, one of the things we're trying to figure out, and this is what also still needs to be, I think, studied more, is what is the right volume. Nobody knows exactly because there's way too many variables. So this is when it comes down to you and how you feel. Things you want to think about. You want to feel energized after your workout, not crushed or fatigued or exhausted. That's the old way of thinking. You want to feel energized after your workout. You don't want to feel incredibly sore, especially as we get older. Soreness is a sign of inflammation and takes longer and longer to recover from. So that's not our goal of working out. You want to feel overall in your week like your energy and performance is improving. You're feeling better. You're sleeping better. You feel more rested. You're not feeling more and more exhausted. We don't need to put stress for just the sake of stress. It needs to be precision to fit with our life and our energy patterns. So we ideally recommend 2 to 3 strength workouts a week of about 25 minutes. We do this with BFR. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. If you don't do BFR yet, you can still follow that same amount. Just know you're going to have to work harder to get the same benefit, or you don't work as hard, you'll get more the moderate level of benefits. And then we recommend 2 short high intensity cardio intervals a week. Those are short, maybe 20-second sprints with long recovery, up to 3-minute intervals with a little more VO2 max emphasis, but where you're pushing kind of the limits of that cardio. So you're getting into that hypoxia, you're getting into that lactate. So you're getting that cascade of benefits in your body, cardiovascular health. Beyond that, so workouts are shorter. That means the rest of the time we want that light movement. The light movement's not exercise, but it's still important. So the walking, the mobility, recovery, all of that becomes a part of the whole part of your program. So the intense workouts are less, but precision, and then balance that with just light movement so you're not sitting all day. And that is your recipe for long-term health benefits without breaking down your body, without having too much stress, without having too much cortisol. So that's why it's good news. I feel like it's super good news because we don't have to crush ourselves. We want to feel energized. The days of long punishing workouts are over. Short precision to stimulate the vigorous effect is the way to go. And that's what I got to say about all that. That was long. Thank you for sticking with it. We're going to go open it up for Q&A. I don't see anything in the chat. So if you have a question, either raise your hand or just feel free to unmute yourself. Renee, go ahead.
Thank you. That was great. And I am worried about how, so I already feel like I'm doing high intensity, vigorous stuff when I do my BFR workouts with you guys.
Hmm.
But I think what I'm confused about is whether or not I do need to do more of what you just said, the sh two short high intensity workouts per week for, do I have to add that on top of the 2 to 3 BFR strength workouts?
That would
I
be
get to, sorry.
you get to. That would be what I consider the ideal sort of optimal advanced if someone's really trying to check all the boxes.
Yeah.
Three BFR strength sessions is still going to give you a ton of benefit. But those intensity intervals are really pushing the envelope for your cardiovascular system.
Right.
So
And
the BFR strength workouts are great for your muscle. You're going to get that type 2 fiber. You're going to get lactate. You're going to get human growth hormone. So you're
mhm.
getting all of that. It's also BFR makes it more challenging on your cardiovascular system, so it improves VO2 max. So you're getting all of that. Just the cardiovascular training is going to be a little more focused on maximal kind of VO2 max and heart health
Okay.
and extra calorie burn.
Okay.
So it's in our grid as kind of an advanced add-on.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
Ashley, when you do the high intensity, those short high intensity intervals, you do them without the bands? Is that
You can do them either way. I prefer to do at least one of them with the bands because you will get into that
benefit? Yeah,
hypoxia and more. Sometimes with the sprints, I don't use them because I'm trying to get maximal power out of my body. But sometimes if that's hard for you to push, you're always going to get more bang for your buck in terms of getting to that hypoxia
Right.
level quicker when you have BFR on. Also, if you're an athlete, if you're truly an endurance athlete training for competition, you need to do some work without the bands because you need to get your body better at working with oxygen.
right,
But I'm talking mostly of people who are just looking at long-term health and fitness.
right. Okay, great.
So this morning I did a bike workout with the bands just on my legs. And I guess my question for this is it better to have the sort of strength turned down on the bike so I'm going as fast as possible, or strength turned up and I'm working as hard as possible?
Either one. So when you go
Okay.
faster with less resistance, that's going to be more cardio. When you go heavier, it's going to be more leg focused. So you can mix it up. You could find a happy medium somewhere in there. But really, either way, you're going to be getting a great cardiovascular benefit from that. Just more like how much strength in your legs are you wanting to focus on? If you've got a hard leg day, maybe keep it light. If you're using it as your strength work, the cool thing about BFR is you can get strength and cardio in the same workout, which is typically not true when you're doing cardio. So if you go a little heavier, that's going to be a strength workout for your legs as well.
So, but it would have the same high intensity sort of.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
You might feel like your heart rate gets a little higher when you're going faster. It'd be something for you to kind of pay attention to. That's why I might just mix it up. But keep in mind when they do these studies, this is where I want more clarity from studies, but again, it's hard to do. But they're not necessarily talking when they say vigorous, that it's not necessarily maximal, like 9 out of 10, right? But it's enough that you're getting into that hypoxia. So BFR just helps you get into hypoxia. That's the whole secret to BFR. It slows down oxygen and it gets you into hypoxia much faster with less work. So you're going to get all those benefits much easier. So I think either way, you're going to get great benefit from that workout. Good questions. Good job getting on the bike pick. Who else?
Great, hot topic. Hey, when you're talking about vigorous exercise, that we want precision, high intensity, and recovery, will you talk a little bit more about the recovery part of that? I noticed in your workouts, like at midway, you're starting to tell us to release our pressure on our bands for a few minutes while we take a sip of water, and then to pump them back up. And
Mhm.
I'm noticing when I do my own self workouts from the library that I'm starting to do that a little bit too. But is that linked to the hypoxia, the more recovery, or what's
So
the
the reason for the release is not so much about recovery, but it's about releasing the lactate that's been trapped. It's to like let our blood flow quickly again and to get everything flowing through the body. It's also just to release the pressure on the vascular system and the veins so they have a chance to it's called reperfusion to get the blood kind of moving more normally and out of the veins and giving a little break, and even just a little psychological break of having that tension so long can be hard. So kind of having that release, getting everything flowing, and then going back to tighten so you can really push the second set. That's kind of why we're doing that. In terms of recovery, that's a great question. There's a lot of things you can do for recovery these days. I would say the thing to prioritize most is, especially if you're doing strength training, is mobility. So whether it's yoga or a 10-minute stretch, and we're putting those at the end of our classes. We have a whole library of stretches. So now we put them at the end of the video so you can just click on that next video for a 10-minute stretch. We have yoga in there twice a week for just 30 minutes for the people that are really wanting to optimize the program. Other things of recovery, though, are just just having light days, right? Every day should not have high intensity. In our program, we have at least 3 days a week that is low intensity. There's no high intensity trigger. It's mobility or recovery or light zone two. Zone two is the highest I would do on a recovery day. Zone two means you're having a sustained heart rate, but it's light enough you can sustain it forever and it's not causing your body to have stress. Zone three is also aerobic. You could do it for a long time, but that would cause your body stress. So we want it low enough that we're not stimulating stress on those 3 days that we're not using BFR. Other things for recovery, those are like cold plunging or saunas, or meditation, or anything that's bringing down your nervous system, anything that's helping your blood flow recover. Even using you technically can use BFR on recovery days. You just would use it passively. You tighten the bands and release the bands and tighten, but you wouldn't do activity. And that just gets that kind of nitric oxide and that blood flow pump, because good blood flow, that's why saunas are good, because it increases blood flow. Blood flow is really good. That's why zone two is good. It's helping blood flow. So getting your blood flowing is good for recovery in a light way. Mobility is great for recovery. Focusing on sleep, which if you're doing regular high intensity, your sleep should improve. And so that's great for recovery. So they work hand in hand. Deep sleep is proven to be enhanced when you have more human growth hormone. So that's a nice kind of connection there. Did that answer your question about recovery, Cheryl?
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Larry.
Yeah, Ashley, awesome. As per usual, per your exceptional level of delivery always, and content, great content. Thanks for taking that landmark, really breakthrough study and getting to the, real essential points of it. Two things. I know in the Parkinson's community, anybody who knows people with Parkinson's, with that brain connection you mentioned, years and years ago, I think it was back in 2007 to 2009, the original medical people and scientists got involved in coming up with protocols, and the vigorous bouts really help Parkinson's patients or people who suffer from it in various levels and stages. Boxing, they have these boxing protocols and a fairly vigorous biking protocol.
Mm-hmm.
But as the Parkinsonian person gets older, it's hard to maintain that level of intensity,
Mm-hmm.
okay, to get that vigorous benefit, everything that you mentioned, especially
Yep.
with the brain-derived factor. So with BFR, I'm finding in some of my travels that if you can get some people who suffer from Parkinson's disease, is to use the bands, as an option. They could still do their protocols, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe reduce that. Second question for you, Ashley, is on recovery, and I'm not anti-recovery, but there's so many infrared lights. I mean, so much is just
Mm-hmm.
saturating the market now. So it's kind of like if people beat themselves up more in vigorous high intensity and too much of that, then they do have to recover, and some of these tools could actually help. But you know what I'm saying? So I wonder if it's product driven or science driven? What is your view on that?
That's an interesting point. I know the wellness recovery landscape is blowing up, which I don't. It's hard for me to understand why because I feel like that's always the last thing that people prioritize, but maybe that's not true. Maybe people are starting to lean into that more. I do agree with you. Some of it is more marketing.
Yeah,
I think mobility, so getting our tissue moving is super
yeah,
important, and I think getting your blood flowing. So a recovery is not sitting on the couch all day long for a
yeah,
day. That's not going to really help your body recover. It's doing light movement. That's when the light movement really comes in as beneficial. Moving your body is getting some natural blood flow, or doing some zone two, or that's where I like, I mean, sauna is not necessarily realistic for a lot of people, but if you're going to use a kind of wellness tool that's out
yeah,
there, I think saunas are a good one for recovery. So I think the two biggest things are mobility of tissue and blood flow are the two
yeah.
things for recovery that matter. Thanks, Larry, and thanks for the comment on the Parkinson's. My
Yep,
dad has Parkinson's. He's the one that introduced me to BFR, and
yep.
I don't have a way to test it, but I think that has helped him maintain for sure because he has not declined that much in the last 6 years
Wow.
mentally. Renee,
Yeah.
did you have another question or no?
No, I'm just so
Okay.
impressed with you, Ashley. Every single time you
Mm.
get on this platform and help us use our brain to challenge our bodies to keep using our brain. I I just am so happy I found you and was referred to you, and um, it's a blessing to have you.
Oh, thank you, Renee.
Gratitude right
That
here.
means a lot. That really does. And I don't know how this found me, but this is definitely my passion
It
project.
totally is. It's
And
coming through every pore of your body. Yeah.
yeah, and I've also realized in this, I never knew this about myself before, but I love understanding the science and breaking it down and making it applicable. It's like I never knew that was one of my like
You are
superpowers,
geeking
but
and nerding out on this
I
for
know I love it, and I
sure.
love being able to like try to make it more applicable because oftentimes it's not, and like people will get it misinterpreted, and then if you misinterpret it, it completely loses any validity of what the meaning is. So I do enjoy. Hopefully I'm breaking it down in a way that you guys
So I
find
tried to
valuable.
take notes while you were talking. It's hysterical. And I'm like, apoptosis. Okay. How do I? Yeah. And yeah,
I'll send you the video, Renee. You can watch it again.
apoptosis, right.
Use AI. Yeah.
Ashley, um, this is Julie. I know my video's off, but I had one more question, and I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else on the call experiences this, but I like sometimes just my nerves will flare up. Just sometimes it's diet driven, sometimes it's the way I've moved my body, and I find that the band irritates it more. And so you'll probably noticed in the last few workouts, like I've just gone without the bands to give it a break
Yep.
until I'm not feeling that occasional firing. And it's not anything that's painful, it's just kind of that tingling sensation. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that, and hopefully maybe I'm not the only one on the call who experiences that, and advice around the bands with that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that often, but if you're saying you're getting so you're saying the bands aren't causing the flare up, but if you have a flare up, then the bands kind of bother it.
Yeah, I'm trying to pay attention which direction actually it goes
Yeah.
because I feel like over the course of the year I've noticed it both ways.
Okay. Yeah, well, I would just, it sounds like you already are. I would just listen to your body. Obviously, when you're using BFR, you don't want tingling, you don't want numbness.
Yeah.
If you have, I mean, everybody's anatomy is different. If you have nerves that are closer to the skin, that's partly why I like the bands we use because they're actually the gentlest on the muscle and the nerve tissue because of their material.
Hmm.
I would just say, either don't use the bands like you're doing when you feel flared up, or just go lighter with the bands for a while and see how that feels. And maybe the tension on the bands is too much for your particular anatomy or body.
Yeah.
And just listen to your body. That's the most important thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Larry, did you have something to add to that? I know Larry's been using BFR. Actually, by the way, you guys, Larry is basically how I found out about B3 and BFR was sitting next to him at the conference, and I've known Larry for 20 years. So anyway, he's hugely responsible for this whole thing being here today. So you're muted, Larry.
Thanks, Ashley. Ashley has the very unique, because of her experience, education level, and just the type of person she is. If she gets something, she gets it. Like she gets it and then she takes action on it.
Mhm.
So, because the science is great, but there's a gap in the fitness industry between the science and the practice. And Ashley, I believe, is one of the pioneers in getting BFR into the practice phase so people can use it. Okay. It's one thing for science, but you have to have that, and that's really important. I had personal experience with one client. Her name was Karen. She had injury, a nerve damage on her left arm only. She did tell me about it. We used the BFR bands, upper bands for the arms and the legs. Her legs were fine, and she started getting noticed more tingling in the damaged side. First thing I did was we reduced the pressure somewhat. Okay, that didn't really help too much, marginal. Then what I did is instead of giving her a dumbbell, we just had the band on without resistance. But she was going through the motion, let's say a dumbbell curl. That helped. So eventually we were able to not load it with anything, just her body weight, and just a little bit lower pressure in the band, and that took care of the problem. But she just had one limb affected. Her good arm and her legs were fine. She didn't have any nerve damage, but I had known that. So to support what you said, Ashley, there, maybe not loading, or I mean, if it's both limbs or both legs, then you have to deal with a little bit more moving parts there, so to speak. No pun intended.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone else? Anyone that we haven't heard from have a question or comment? Going once,
I
going
have a
twice.
quick, I just have a
Oh,
quick comment. I've been really following BFR in pro athletes, and there are a lot of teams, almost all the soccer teams in Europe, almost all the cycling pro teams everywhere, football players, you name it, a lot of sports are really keying into this and understanding the benefits for these elite athletes. And so it's really interesting that it hasn't really trickled down kind of to the masses, but there's a lot happening in the higher level sports. They're using it not only for muscle building, but also for recovery too. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of
yeah.
a tangent comment, but just to
And I,
show that people who are really cutting edge in science and sport and physiology are also seeing the benefits of BFR and spending a lot of money to incorporate them, team wide, and sport
and
wide.
one of the studies I saw, Emily, that you shared with me for cycling, I thought was fascinating. These elite cyclists who are spending hours and hours and hours a week on their bike, one day a week, they added in BFR, high intensity interval training, and they were getting 7% increase in VO2 max. That's unbelievable with one short workout with all the training that they normally do. So it shows you that precision, high intensity, and BFR allows you to get higher intensity more easily, even for a pro athlete. You're getting these cascading effects that are just major. So, yeah, Larry.
I have to share this, all you ladies on. Lindsey Vaughn, 41 years old,
41.
Olympic team. She
Yeah.
was one of the first um, alpine skiers that Dr. Jim Stray Gunderson, years back, who developed the band we use, put on Lindsay. Also, his other client was Michaela Schifrin. They're both going in the Olympics. I mean, obviously, they use it as part of their program, to your point. It's not just exclusive.
Mhm.
But with Lindsay at 41, multiple operations, her rehab, was more efficient. Same with Michaela, though she's a lot younger, but they use BFR big time. Great point.
Cool. Yeah, we're cutting edge people. Come on, let's bring it. That's right. That's right. But people are going to be catching on. I'm telling you, this is too good to stay in the closet forever. It's on its way. And so I'm happy so happy for all of you that have taken the leap with me as early adopters. Anyway, great call, you guys. I really appreciate you all being here and spending the time. If you have any follow-up questions, you can always email me, Ashley at Selly Strength. If any of you haven't tried BFR yet, reach out. Be happy to tell you more about it. We have a great way to get involved for low cost in our program right now. But yeah, just love this group, and thanks for being here. All right, guys.
Thanks,
Sally.
Sally.
Thank you.
Job, guys. Have a great day.